Something is moving under the quiet surface, and if you have been feeling that strange pressure lately, it is not just in your head. A final and very heavy choice is slowly forming in their heart, and in some way your presence is written all through it. On the outside they may still look calm, maybe distant, maybe cold, maybe as if nothing touches them anymore. But inside, a truth they kept avoiding has become too strong to push away. This is not only about missing you, it is about what your connection woke up in them and what it forced them to face in themselves. They are standing at a major crossroads now, and every road they imagine somehow leads back to you. For a long time they tried to bury all of this under work, routine, pride, noise, and emotional space, hoping silence would make the feeling weaker. But some bonds do not fade like that. Some connections stay alive in the background, and the harder a person tries to shut them down, the louder they become in the soul. That is where they are now, looking back, questioning the story they told themselves for so long. Part of them is pulled toward you with a force they can no longer explain away, while another part still resists because accepting this truth means dropping old walls and being deeply honest. And honesty like that feels dangerous to a heart that has learned to survive through distance. So now they sit with it, quietly, wondering why your memory keeps rising in still moments, wondering why no one else has truly replaced what they felt with you. If you can feel this shift already, stay with me, because what their silence means is becoming clearer by the second, and the answer may be closer than it seems. They are now in that heavy space right before real clarity arrives, where the mind can only run for so long before the mask starts to crack. If they return, it will be because they finally understood that a bond like this does not come twice in one life. And if they walk away, it will never mean you were not enough. It will only mean they were not ready for the level of honesty, softness, and inner change that loving you would have required from them. That is why your role right now is not to chase, not to force, not to control what happens next. Let truth rise in its own time. Let silence reveal what words could not say before. What is happening inside them has real weight. This is not a passing mood, not a brief doubt, not a random wave that will disappear next week. It is a full inner battle that keeps growing. On one side there is warmth, memory, longing, belonging, and that deep feeling of home they connected to you. On the other side there is an older voice, one shaped by pain, fear, disappointment, and the instinct to stay guarded at all costs. That voice tells them to keep distance, keep control, and protect themselves even if it costs them something real. These two forces are crashing into each other inside them, and the pressure is getting harder to hide with each passing day. They may try to cover it by staying busy. They may fill their schedule. They may smile. They may act like none of this matters. But buried feelings do not die. They rise, and the more they push them down, the more power those feelings gain in the dark. So if things have felt strange lately, if the energy feels charged, if the silence feels louder than usual, there is a reason for that. Something serious is building inside them, and the next step matters more than either of you first realized. You became a turning point in their life, even if neither of you saw it clearly in the beginning. Something about this connection touched the part of them that existed under control, under image, under all the careful ways they learned to protect themselves. It challenged walls they built years ago just to survive what hurt them before. And now they are facing a choice that cannot be delayed forever. They can stay inside the limits of who they have always been, safe but emotionally shut down. Or they can step into a new version of themselves that asks for courage, openness, and risk. That new version feels unfamiliar. It scares them. It asks them to stop hiding behind old patterns. That is why this struggle is exhausting them from the inside out. You have probably felt it in the inconsistency, in the push and pull, in the closeness that suddenly turns into distance, in the moments when they seem ready, then vanish again. This is not always a game. It is not always manipulation. Sometimes it is what happens when a person wants the connection, but fears the transformation that comes with it. As this pressure builds, old illusions are burning away. They can no longer tell themselves that you were just a passing chapter, just another face, just a brief emotional moment. They are being pushed to see you more clearly than before, and even more than that, they are being forced to see themselves differently too. Old memories are coming back with stronger meaning. Shared feelings are rising again with more intensity. Every silence feels heavier now. Every absence says more than it used to. This discomfort is necessary because real choices are not born through running away. They are born when confusion starts to clear and the heart gets tired of hiding under fear. If this is hitting deep for you, keep listening, because this next part explains why the energy feels so intense right now. There comes a point when uncertainty becomes too heavy to carry, and they are moving toward that point now. Not because the outside world changed in some dramatic way, but because the inner split cannot last forever. For too long they tried to reduce their feelings by telling themselves it was not that serious. They tried to think smaller, feel less, care less. They convinced themselves it would fade, that it would pass, that no real action was needed. But something deeper in them knows that story no longer works. That deeper part knows this mattered, knows it still matters. And that awareness is what is pulling everything back to the surface with force. Feelings this deep do not sit still. They grow in silence. They change in absence. They wait until the person carrying them can no longer deny what is there. And now those emotions are returning in waves, late at night, in the quiet part of the day, in strange pauses after a busy hour, in memories they never expected to feel so strongly again. They are noticing how their thoughts drift back to you over and over without warning. How your presence still hums in the background of ordinary life. How distraction cannot fully erase the sense that something meaningful is missing. Your absence played a strong role in this. By stepping back, you left them alone with their own mind, and that silence became a mirror. It made them face the missing comfort, the missing spark, the missing emotional safety that your presence once gave them. Once they felt the real shape of what was gone, they stopped asking whether it mattered, and started measuring everything else against the depth they felt with you. That is when fear and desire began crashing together with full force. One side wants you, the other side fears what wanting you means. And now the battle between those two sides has reached a level they can no longer manage like before. Inside them, the pull toward you is becoming louder than the defense that once protected them. That does not mean the fear is gone. It is still there, still loud, still trying to hold the wheel. But for the first time, desire is beginning to speak with more strength than fear. That is why they seem unsettled. That is why the silence feels tense. That is why the energy around this connection may feel almost electric, even though little is being said. They are not stuck because they do not care. They are stuck because they are in a quiet battle that is pushing them toward a breaking point. This is no longer only about a relationship. It has become a moment of identity, a moment that asks who they really are and who they are willing to become. Even if they appear more distant right now, do not mistake that for the ending. They are starting to realize that staying in the middle, neither fully present nor fully gone, has cost them peace. It has drained them. The hesitation that once felt like protection has slowly turned into a prison, and the walls they leaned on are cracking under the weight of what they can no longer deny. They remember the moments they stayed silent when they wanted to speak. They remember the times pride stood where truth should have stood. They feel the gap between their feelings and their actions, and that gap is getting harder to live with. When a person is left with their own thoughts long enough, truth begins to rise above the noise. That is what is happening here. Not because someone pushed them, not because others influenced them, but because an inner shift is becoming too strong to ignore. The connection now shows up in their quietest moments, and each return is changing how they understand the story between you. What once looked random now feels meaningful. What once felt confusing now feels like a pattern, and that pattern is opening their eyes. They are beginning to understand that they were not only missing a person, they were missing the version of themselves that came alive around you. More open, more honest, more emotionally awake, more real. and the pain of being far from that version of themselves is becoming too sharp to ignore. That is why this is such a major turning point. When someone starts missing who they became with you, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered. The real question becomes whether they are willing to return to the truth it revealed inside them. As this awareness grows, the outside world begins to lose some of its power to distract them. They can stay busy, they can fill the hours, they can throw themselves into goals, work, plans, social noise, and everyday routines. But underneath all of it, there is still one quiet current pulling them back to the same place, to you, to what was felt, to what remains unfinished. This is the stage where the protective ego begins to lose its grip. That old part of them wants control, distance, safety. But a deeper part is starting to see that full disconnection has its own pain, and sometimes that pain becomes heavier than the fear of closeness. So now they are weighing two futures. The familiar life that feels emotionally empty, or the unknown path that carries risk, but also the chance of something true. And for the first time, the possibility of something real is beginning to feel more valuable than the protection they once clung to. That is where courage begins. Not when fear vanishes, but when truth starts to matter more than fear. If this is sounding exactly like the energy you have been picking up, stay to the end, because the final shift happening in them is even deeper than it looks from the outside. With this growing awareness, a new kind of stillness is forming in them. The pressure is still there, but it feels different now. Less scattered, less chaotic, more focused, more honest. They are no longer fighting every feeling the second it rises. They are starting to let those feelings speak. They are beginning to admit that what they feel is real, and that acceptance brings a kind of quiet peace, not because everything is solved, but because inner conflict is slowly turning into direction. They are standing at the edge of an old life and looking across to a new possibility, and the only bridge between those two worlds is one honest choice. This is the moment when silence stops protecting them and starts reflecting them back to themselves. It shows them where pride blocked love, where fear blocked truth, where avoidance created distance that never had to be there. They are revisiting old moments now with new eyes, conversations, glances, pauses, memories, but this time with more maturity and more emotional depth. They can finally see where fear made the choices before. They can also see the value of what was trying to grow between you. This is not just regret. It is a deeper rearranging of what really matters. Things they once placed above connection, like image, control, safety, and emotional self-protection, are starting to feel hollow compared to the depth of something genuine. Another shift is happening too. Empathy is growing in them. They are beginning to feel what their distance may have felt like from your side. They are beginning to understand the emotional weight you carried while they stood back in confusion. That kind of understanding softens a person. It humbles them. It makes it harder to hide behind coldness, because once responsibility enters the heart, everything changes. And once someone reaches that point, the next decision becomes very serious. Even if nothing about it looks dramatic from the outside, the last layers of hesitation are starting to fall away. The old thoughts of maybe, should, and someday are losing some of their power, and in their place something heavier is growing, a sense of must. They must face what is real. They must deal with what they feel. They must stop wasting time inside emotional paralysis. Time itself feels different to them now, more precious, less endless. They are beginning to understand that staying stuck is also a decision, and often the most painful one of all. This clarity is not only in their thoughts, they feel it in the body, in the chest, in the pressure that rises when they think about reaching out, speaking openly, or finally doing something real. The unknown still scares them, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is starting to scare them even more. That is why movement is closer now than it has been in a long time. Words once held back are rising to the surface. Actions that once seemed impossible are becoming harder to avoid. Because when truth gets this strong, silence stops feeling safe. It starts feeling unbearable. And remember this clearly. Whatever they do next will not come from a random impulse. It will not come from one passing mood. It will come from a long, hard, honest process of facing themselves without excuses. That is why this moment matters so much. This is not a feeling that fades overnight. It is a reckoning, a slow change at first, quiet at first, and then all at once. At the center of it all is one undeniable fact. You changed something in them. You reflected a part of their deeper potential back to them. You became a mirror, a catalyst, a steady point during a time when they were lost inside themselves. And even in silence, that impact never left. If you are still here, then you already know this is bigger than surface words. Now they are reaching a deeper level of awareness than before. The noise around them is slowly fading. The path is becoming clearer. The question is no longer whether this affected them. The real question is when they will fully act on what they now understand. Layer by layer, confusion is falling away and revealing a quiet certainty underneath. They know now that trying to control their feelings only made those feelings stronger. They know pretending not to see the truth is no longer an option. If you have been sensing this shift, trust what you feel. Something very real is moving toward its final stage in their heart, and it is forcing them to decide whether they are ready to live from truth instead of fear. Your role in this is simple, even if it is not easy. Stay centered, stay calm. Do not chase what is already being brought into the light. Let them feel the full weight of your absence. Let them recognize the true value of your presence. Let them face the cost of acting like they feel less than they really do. The person who kept hesitating is coming close to a line they cannot keep crossing back and forth. One way or another, something will give. The middle ground is collapsing. The old excuses are losing power. And soon one truth will rise above all the noise that once covered it. This is why the energy may feel so thick right now, so heavy, so charged. Because the inner conflict that once kept everything frozen is turning into purpose. The quiet before the truth is often the loudest part of the whole journey, even when no one else can hear it. And if this message connects with what you have been feeling deep down, do not ignore that. Sometimes your intuition notices the shift before the world does. Sometimes the heart feels the decision taking shape before the mouth speaks it aloud. What is happening in them now is not only emotional. It is personal. It is spiritual in the simplest sense of the word. It is the moment a person starts seeing themselves with more honesty than ever before. They are recognizing how often fear made their choices, how often pride blocked tenderness, how often silence looked safer than truth, even when that silence slowly damaged everything meaningful. And because they see it more clearly now, they cannot return to their old innocence. They cannot pretend they do not know. They cannot act as if your connection meant nothing. That chapter is over. This new stage asks more from them. It asks for responsibility. It asks for courage. It asks whether they will keep protecting an old version of themselves, or step into someone more open, more direct, more willing to risk being seen. That is a big shift, bigger than a simple message, bigger than one conversation. It is a change in the way they relate to love, to loss, and to themselves. They are starting to understand that their silence had consequences, that distance has a cost. That waiting too long can wound both people, and this understanding is softening them from within. It does not make them weak, it makes them real. It brings humility, it brings depth, it turns vague emotion into honest awareness. That is why whatever comes next will carry real meaning, because if they reach out, it will not be from boredom, not from loneliness alone, not from impulse. It will be from finally seeing the truth they kept trying to avoid, and if they do not move, then that too will reveal something clear about where they still are. Either way, the truth is rising. Either way, something false is falling apart. And once that process starts, the old emotional sleep cannot fully return. A heart that has been awakened like this does not go back to sleep easily. So if lately the bond has felt unusually intense, if the silence has felt full instead of empty, if something in you keeps saying a deeper choice is being made behind the scenes, there is a reason. They are approaching the point where excuses no longer comfort them, where delay no longer feels neutral, where the pain of doing nothing becomes stronger than the fear of doing something real. This is why their inner world may feel restless, heavy, even sharp, not because they are losing control in a chaotic way, but because they are being pushed toward alignment. The feelings, the memories, the regret, the longing, the truth, all of it is beginning to point in one direction. And that direction is honesty. Honesty about you. Honesty about themselves. Honesty about what this connection changed in them forever. You do not need to force this process. You do not need to prove your value. You do not need to run after what is already echoing in their heart. Let the moment do its work. Let reality speak where words once failed. Let them discover for themselves what your absence has shown them. Because when life finally asks a person to choose between fear and truth, that choice reveals everything. It shows who they are. It shows what they serve. It shows whether they are ready to become more than the version of themselves built from old wounds. And that is where they are now. Very close to a final inner decision. Very close to seeing that the quiet before the truth was not emptiness at all, but the loudest and most necessary part of the journey. If this connected with what you have been sensing, hold that knowing with calm. Stay grounded. Stay clear. The next chapter of this story may be closer than it seems, and soon enough, what has been hidden in silence will have no choice but to show its face.